So let's quickly debunk this common myth from Muslims that Rebecca was married by Isaac whenever she was 3 years old. Now they do this as a whataboutism because Aisha was 6 whenever Muhammad married her because he's and they are trying to get around like, oh, well, it's not a problem that Muhammad was we don't care because Isaac was also now that's evil and stupid and wrong, but it also doesn't work in any way whatsoever. People love to point out the camel's feet, that Rebecca watered 10 camels, but that is not actually the best feat that we can point to show that she was not 3 years old. In the Hebrew, she is called 4 different words, and there is an interesting fact that she's not called one of these words that she could be called. In the Hebrew, she is called a Nara, which is anywhere from the age of 12 to like 20, 25. It just typically means young woman, typically post-pubescent. You have to have at least 2 pubic hairs to be in this category. In the Talmud, it shortens the time span to be just like a couple months. So you're only a Nara from like 12 to 12 and a half or to 13. And in the Bible, it's actually used much more broadly. Lots of different young women post-pubescent are also called Nara. So it's at least a teenager. She's also called an Alma, which is also at least a teenager. It's a young, unmarried woman, but she would be legally of the status of a woman, and she would just be unmarried. But theoretically, the usage is, hey, she could get married and conceive immediately. We see that in Isaiah 7. So we also see in Genesis that she is called a Betula. Well, that is an interesting one because it means virgin. You wouldn't specify that a child is a virgin unless you're kind of a creepy person. You wouldn't have to specify, hey, you see that toddler there, that 3-year-old? That's a virgin. No, gross, ew, don't do that. Instead, virgin is only applied of women who are expected to be married, typically teenagers and older. You wouldn't use it of someone who's prepubescent. And lastly, and most importantly, she's called an Isha, which means woman, grown adult woman. It also means wife because most women are married. So this is a woman according to every Hebrew word used about her. You could say, oh, well, the camel feet was just her supernaturally supplying it. Like in Bereshit Rabbah, it talks about how the water went into her jar. And like, okay, well, maybe she was just a miracle child, or maybe she had really good steroids, and that's how she watered the camels. But you can't get around the language usage. The Bible itself calls her a grown woman 4 different ways, and it doesn't use the word for girl, which is Yalda. Yalda is used of other girls in the Bible, of young girls, prepubescent, or right at puberty. Dinah, for example, was a girl who was right at puberty. She was around 13, 14, and she is called this. Yet Rebecca is not called this, indicating that she's older than at least 13, if not in her late teens or early 20s. There's even some rabbis who go as late as 30. For whenever she married Isaac. Interestingly, the rabbis, by and large, do not affirm that she is 3. This is one of the myths of the Muslims, that the rabbis themselves are the ones who are interpreting that she is 3 years old. They don't. Most rabbis think she's 14 years old. The earliest source we have for the age of Rebecca is the Book of Jubilees, written by Jews, and that is the age of 20. So every single source we have, other than like 2 rabbis and then a interpretation of Seir Olam Rabbah. Other than that, everyone else thinks she's 14. And most of the later commentators on those early sources or medieval sources that say that she was 3, they're like, oh, well, that obviously can't be the case because she's called a Nara, because she gives consent. Because a girl post-puberty has to be asked for consent to be married. The fact that her family asked for her consent to marriage indicates she's post-pubescent. Again, not a 3-year-old, unless you're thinking a 3-year-old is post-puberty, but she wouldn't be. And she also has a veil, which would not be common practice for children to use, and they have intercourse on that night. Do you really want to affirm that your prophet, Isaac, had intercourse with a 3-year-old that endangered her life and would have probably killed her and caused internal bleeding? No, you don't. You shouldn't. This is evil. This is wrong. This is stupid. This is one of the worst arguments Islam ever came up with. It's essentially the flat earth theory of arguments, yet the Quran kind of affirms a flat earth, so, who can tell? Either way, now you know, Rebecca, teenager, or, young 20s, not a 3-year-old. Do better.